We want to bring in now CBSN political contributor Molly Hooper and CBSN political analyst Leslie Sanchez and Professor Jonathan Adler, law professor at Case Western University, if we can. As we continue to see this vote take place, Molly, I want to ask you about the news we just got that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has reportedly said he has not yet decided on how he will vote on impeachment, but he reportedly called Senator Schumer's office today to say he will not reconvene the Senate Friday to vote. So this, of course, raises questions about the timing of next steps. Molly, what's your reaction to this latest news about McConnell?
Well, it doesn't mean that he wouldn't support impeachment per se, but what he's saying is that he's not going to do it until after the president is out of office. And this is where Professor Adler probably can weigh in a little bit better. But the question is, can you impeach the president or any office holder really after they have left office? The reason why some say that you can do that is because part of the removal of office is also the clause, the provision that says that individual who is removed, quote unquote, from office cannot serve or cannot run for higher office again in the future. So it essentially prevents that person from running for office again. Now, that's something that perhaps we don't know this, but that could be something that McConnell would support. But again, in that statement that we saw from McConnell's office, he says he wants to listen to the legal arguments, and the legal arguments as they were presented on the House floor by the Republicans who are opposing impeachment. They say that this specific article of impeachment that specifically mentions incitement to violence, that is not enough to warrant removal of office, because there's a very specific definition of incitement, a legal definition of incitement, that these remarks do not make. And they say that it would be a very slippery slope to go down that road, because really what it could do is infringe on your First Amendment rights. Again, I'm sure the professor has a better explanation. I know that I've heard both sides of the story, but that's where these Republicans are coming from. And if that's where Mitch McConnell would be viewing this from, then he would probably oppose. Mm-hmm. But again, it's unclear at this point.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. Professor Adler, would you like to weigh in on that? I know you've written about this very topic, whether this article of impeachment, incitement to violence, does touch on the First Amendment. Would you like to weigh in on that?
Sure. A few points. I mean, the first is the larger point, which is ultimately members of Congress and members of the Senate are the judges of what constitutes an impeachable offense. So they have to each consult their own consciences and their own views of what the Constitution means. In terms of the language of the Constitution and how we've always understood it, the impeachment power has always been understood to implicate actions that might otherwise be legal. The idea is to, among other things, protect the country against abuses of power and a public official's violations of their oath. So going back to the founding period, impeachment has been threatened and used against officials who have done things that were legal, but that constituted some sort of abuse of power or betrayal of the public trust. Further, impeachment has been used and impeachment charges have been brought against public officials based on things that they've said that in other contexts might be protected by the First Amendment. Impeachment is not a criminal trial. It is not a criminal prosecution. Impeachment itself cannot result in an official being put in jail. It's about taking someone out of office. It's about declaring that their actions are incompatible with their remaining in office. And then, as was just noted, the Senate, in addition to convicting, can also vote to disqualify the individual from holding future office. But that person must first be convicted, and then there must be a second vote to actually impose the disqualification punishment as well.
That's an interesting point. So he's not a president who is impeached or removed from office by the Senate is not automatically disqualified from holding office again. That's a second vote. Would that have to go back to the House and then the Senate? How would that work, Professor?
And that would just be in the Senate. But the historical practice is to not impose the punishment of disqualification unless there is an additional vote on that. The language of the Constitution basically says you can't do more then remove and disqualify. There's no additional punishment
Right.
that either the House or Senate can impose, but they're understood as separate punishments. And there have been quite a few impeachments with convictions historically where the individual was convicted and removed, but not disqualified. In fact, there's one former federal judge who was removed from office who then ran for Congress and was elected. So we've seen that happen.
Right. So, Leslie, I want to turn to you now. I want to get your take on how significant it is for Republicans and for the Republican Party that McConnell, while, not saying that he is going to vote for impeachment, which was something that we were hearing earlier in the press, but today he's saying he has not decided. Even that sounds significant, though. He has not come out against impeachment. And we know that there are about 5 House Republicans who have signaled or indicated that they will vote for impeachment. How significant is this for the Republican Party?
It just shows you how tenuous that line is, right? And how in this very partisanship environment, parsing that out is very difficult for leadership. Not only is he sticking his finger in the wind trying to see politically what is the right thing to do, but if you throw this to a future time when the president's no longer there, it certainly would, looking at the new Congress, it would look much more partisan than it does now. So there's a lot of strategic thinking, and I throw that back to Molly, who understands kind of the thinking on the Senate. This is a very kind of a shrewd element to position the Senate in that way. But I would say, from what we saw today, because of the hyperpartisanship, because of the sanctimonious rebukes on both sides, it didn't make it any clearer that Republicans would all of a sudden come over and you'd see, dozens more coming to the Democratic side to impeach. Instead, it's almost at a standstill, which is why it's, again, like I talk about, that tenuous line of where we go from here. People want to rebuke the president, both Republicans and Democrats. They just do not have agreement on how to do that.
Well, let's talk about that, Molly, because we did hear some Republicans who said that they will not vote for impeachment. We did hear them lay some blame at the foot of the president. Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said that he should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was happening, and he did not. So there are Republicans who would like to see some censure or some action taken. What might that look like?
Well, in fact, they actually have moved forward with the resolution, or they put forward a resolution to censure the president and also to create a fact-finding commission into how this happened. But again, I think it's that language, the article of impeachment specifically on the incitement of violence. I have a feeling that I have more than a feeling, I've heard from Republicans who said if the article was different, if it was on, say, perhaps that the president did not act as forcefully, as quickly as he could have immediately once the Capitol was breached to call out his supporters and say, stop this, it's terrible, this is not right, no violence. If the president did that, if he immediately deployed the National Guard and was on the phone with the Army Secretary, that would have been one thing. But there are a lot of Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, who is an institutionalist, who were so upset that the president waited almost 2 hours before taking any kind of action and sort of sat on his feet. And there are a lot of Republicans, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the Republicans I've talked to who feel that by not acting, it was almost as if the executive branch was attacking the legislative branch, the Article I branch of government, and that in and of itself could have been an article that these individuals would have supported. But as it is, the specific language in this article of impeachment, the incitement to violence, is something that a lot of these Republicans can't afford to vote for and go home to their supporters who do still support President Trump, who have been called all sorts of names in the media, who've been called all sorts of names by their opponents, who the more that they are attacked for being pro-Trump, almost the more defensively they back him. So the Republicans are calculating a lot right now. And again, it's in the wording, which is why you did see Leader McCarthy and other Republicans say, why can't we move forward with a censure resolution? And that's the question they have.
And Molly, just tell us briefly what we're seeing right now and, when we can expect this voting to be wrapped up and to have a decision here.
Have a decision? Well, voting these days has taken a lot longer than it has in the past because of the COVID restrictions in place by the House. And so technically, lawmakers are supposed to be voting in, I think there's about 5 different groups that can go to the floor. They have to avoid each other, go in certain doors, go out certain doors. So a vote that normally would have taken maybe 25 minutes at most now is lasting up to an hour and 15 minutes. Right now, they're voting on whether to move the impeachment resolution to vote to impeach the president. And once they voted ostensibly in favor of it, that will go to the Senate. But when that goes to the Senate, that's another question, and one that's leaving a lot of people wondering up on Capitol Hill.
All right, Molly Hooper, Jonathan Adler, and Leslie Sanchez, thanks to all of you.